Hello there. What is going on, everyone? We are talking about X-Wing today, the future of X-Wing and the X-Wing Alliance. This is a community-driven effort, and we're going to talk with Nick Sperry of 312 Squadron. How are you, Nick?
Good, man. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. I've got a lot of questions. I know that the audience watching is going to have a lot of questions too. So hopefully I can ask a lot of them, and if there are any any important ones that I miss, maybe you can help us out. But first off, for people who aren't familiar with you, why don't you can you give us like the elevator pitch of how long you've been playing X-Wing, and tell us about the 312 Squadron as well as X-Wing Alliance.
Yeah, sure. I got my homework cut out for me here. So my name is Nick Sperry. I am based in Chicago, Illinois. So you can see the Chicago flag behind me. We try to represent Chicago with all our branding with 312 Squadron, which is based off the area code of Chicago, is why it's called 312.
And not
I've been playing
312.
X-Wing, and not 312, 3112, which doesn't make any sense. Yeah,
Mhm.
I've heard it all. And I've been playing X-Wing since late 2018. I got into 1.0 a week before I found out 2.0 existed. So I'm actually a 2.0er. I feel
Okay.
like that's rare to meet people who only started playing in 2.0. It's usually people who started in like end of 2.0, 2.5,
It's
or
very Gen
1.0.
Z
But
of
I am,
you.
yeah,
Yeah.
right. So what is that, 5 years of experience on my X-Wing resume? Mostly with 2.0, and now of course with 2.5. And what was the last thing that you had asked
Oh,
about what I'd?
and the X-Wing Alliance, because
Yeah.
that's kind of, I think, the big thing that we're going to talk. Well, and maybe I should preface it with a little bit of why it is necessary. So just in case anybody watching this has been under a rock for a while, Atomic Mass Games and Asmodee both announced about maybe a month and a half ago that X-Wing and Armada both were going to meet a miserable fate at being strangled to death by their grisly hands, or something like that. Basically, that there was
Yeah,
end
a
end of
fully healthy
development.
game on life support,
Yes,
basically. Yeah.
end of official development for these games, and they would still be technically supported with organized play through Worlds 2025, but reprints weren't happening, and no more development was happening. So the community has kind of initially had a little bit of a panic mode, and that's where X-Wing Alliance comes in, right? Am I too far
Yeah,
off the
no,
mark there?
no, you're spot on. We set into motion a plan to get everyone from all over the world, main pillars in different areas of X-Wing. You have streamers, you have play testers, you have podcasters, former designers, community representatives, the whole nine yards, rule judges, TOs, everybody coming together
Mhm.
to basically build a group, a coalition effort, community effort to uh, nurture the game, provide support for the game through rules design, points updates, OP planning, and keep it sustainable moving forward.
Okay. Now, who
Yeah.
who is the X-Wing Alliance? Is it you? Is it like is it like a super secret Illuminati? Is it a massive group? What can you tell us about actually who is making who's calling the shots for X-Wing now?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I am like the communications person for the X-Wing Alliance. Since I do a ton of streaming and podcasting and just live events, the X-Wing Alliance is like, Nick, like we want you to kind of be talking about us and making sure you're putting in a good word for the group. And so that's why I'm here talking to you. And um it's not just me, it's a much larger group of people, several dozen people, but the X-Wing Alliance has like kind of just a system in place, like a quote unquote, we call it a leadership council. We have 3 individuals who are elected by this large group to basically kind of keep things moving and herd people together and help form teams of people. All of them are elected. We not people are nominated. We can get into that in a bit, but those 3 individuals, Stephen Kim, you might know him as the architect of Yasby, yet another squad builder.
Okay.
Filippo Bossi from Team Italy, he's the XTC guy. He's been running XTC and helping run it for several years now.
Mhm.
And then Louis Leong or Long, sorry Louis, I never know exactly how to pronounce it, but I think I covered my bases there. From the Jawas, he's known as Utini on Discord, and he is also a big community rep prize support guy. Those are the three who are kind of like the leadership council.
Mhm.
And then there's a development squad of people. There's OP that just got elected, all that good stuff that we can dive into. I don't want to run my mouth too
No,
much.
I wanted to ask you because I know like one of the biggest names in X-Wing that I'm familiar with, aside of myself, no, I'm just kidding, is hardly anymore. But once upon a time, I covered X-Wing a lot more. But is you guys have Paul Heaver on board, which I thought was really a good ad. And I've never met Paul, but that I think it's good to get big name people on board. And I wanted to share something with you because I was talking with some former FFG X-Wing developers recently, and when Paul Heaver's name came up, it was they had some very nice things to say. And so in regards to the X-Wing Alliance, in addition to like well wishing and stuff like that, there's a lot of stuff that folks can't say, and I'm going to leave specific names out of this because I don't think it was meant to be like a quotable quote, but I'm just going to share the gist of it. Is a lot of people, I've seen a lot of people mention being former playtesters to kind of boast their accolades, and I should have a say in where X game is going because I used to playtest. And while that is good, I don't think it's quite the accolade that everybody necessarily thinks it is, because frankly, it doesn't. Playtesting and design are two very, very different things. But as it applies to Paul Heaver, I was told that he was kind of the best of both worlds, and by former FFG folks as well. So the X-Wing developers themselves had at least relayed to me to relay to you guys their blessed, their kind of well wishes for this, and kind of a attaboy, thumbs up, like good job getting Paul on board. So I thought that was pretty cool, and I just wanted to share that with you. So, if you can forward some well wishes over to Paul, that'd be great. Yeah,
Paul, there you go, man.
Yeah.
I was just talking to Paul earlier today. Paul obviously is a really good X-Wing player. He's multi-world champion.
Oh yeah.
And as I made a video on when we were covering the development squad leads, and Paul Heaver is the design lead for the game moving forward for the X-Wing Alliance. And I said something along the lines of, Paul sees beyond X-Wing when it comes to walking up to the table and putting your ships down. He's been deep rooted in all sides of the game in terms of playing at the highest level, and then just being involved directly with just the mechanics, design, and scope of the game. And it's, on one hand, having people like Paul a part of this is great because there's name recognition, but the purpose of the X-Wing Alliance isn't to be a group of celebrities, right? X-Wing celebrities. As famous as I think I am, like,
exactly.
It goes much more than it's about. It's not only about getting the right people involved, but it's getting people with different views who all are passionate and have earned their time and their place, just kind of representing X-Wing wherever they are for their communities, and getting them all in a room and really letting everyone hash it out and come to agreements with checks and balances on where we should go. So I understand the whole, like, what gives you the right, to keep, to think that you can make changes to the game. And we hear that. I get it, like, totally. But you can put a lot of faith in this group. I'm really impressed with what I've seen so far.
Awesome. And that kind of feeds into like another question I have is like for people who may not be that familiar with X-Wing Alliance, but maybe they do have like, well, I really, I want my voice to be heard and stuff like that. How can people get involved? What would you suggest? Is there a website? Is there, a specific Discord? And we'll probably drop links in the description below as well.
Yeah, I'll have a few links for you. So in terms of contact, I am one key point of contact because I'm like kind of the contact person. There is a contact form that the council and I monitor and respond to, as well as there's also a form to apply to help in more than just play testing, because we have a points beta coming up soon in September, and we'll need people to test. But there's a few ways that you can immediately put your name in the hat and be like, I put my name in the goblet of fire, like I want to be involved. And we're monitoring that constantly, and we want to get as many people who want to help as possible.
Okay.
The other thing in terms of centralized information, that's a question I've been getting a lot of, and it is probably one of the most important questions like right now, since this is fairly new. It's about 5 weeks old, the X-Wing Alliance. The 2.5 edition Discord server is the Discord server to go for all XWA related things. There is a 32 question FAQ that I've written out that we will be adding and updating that answers a lot of people's questions in that server. And in terms of a website, we are going to be completely revamping an existing X-Wing related site that Louis has been running. And once we have more information on that and its availability, I'll be sharing that immediately.
Wonderful. All right. Awesome. Yeah. Awesome. So you mentioned something about points, and so I think that kind of is a good segue into what specifically you guys are looking to do as far as, like, I think there's three big things that I'm interested in: points, rules, and new content. So so as far as those, are you guys looking to make a lot of changes right away, especially with Worlds coming up? And are you planning on pushing stuff out before? This is like probably 6 questions in one. So let me just start with a little bit more of a basic one. What are you guys actually trying to do?
Yeah, so we have a short-term goal and short-term plan that we're putting into place that will be rolling out soon, and a longer-term goal. Our mission statement as the X-Wing Alliance is to host the world's largest X-Wing event ever in 2030 and beyond, but by 2030. That's our mission statement right now. That we want people to look at that and be like, we're committed to building the blocks to getting to that point. It's a challenge, but we're excited to build that up. And then in terms of short term, we have a points team led by Ollie Pocknell. He's the 186 Squadron guy and the 2019 World Champion as well. He's another guy that sees beyond X-Wing really well and has been involved with the game as a community rep and a great player, just kind of like Paul as well. And so he has a team, and they've put together a points beta using the existing rule set until we go through Adepticon 2025. And some people are wondering, well, why bother with the 20-point system with the current rule set? There's a few key considerations I just want to remind people of. One of them is that the current season is still official AMG OP season, meaning there are events with official prize support run by TOs and people that are indirectly or directly involved with what we're trying to do with XWA, and we need to just give them their support to run their events the way they should be without any problems. The other thing is that the squad builders that we will be utilizing for the XWA in the future are the ones that people use for their tournaments, for those AMG OP official tournaments. It would be very confusing for us to hijack them and change everything and then not cause problems. It would cause a lot of confusion, a lot of issues. So we want to respect that. And the other thing is that we, to answer the question about like bigger change, like the only way to get to bigger change is to basically build up to making those decisions with a lot of testing. So the only way we can really move forward is to use the existing rule set. Legacy exists already. We acknowledge that. And I think Legacy, what they've done with the Legacy project has been great. We're talking with them and we support them and people who want to play 2.0, but there's no reason for us to go back to 2.0 if 2.0 Legacy exists already. So we won't be doing that exactly.
Okay.
I think that answers a few of your questions. I'll start with that.
That does, and I'd like to kind of piggyback off of one of the things you were talking about. So, like, as far as the points beta to go live, it sounds like after Worlds. Now, I think that's good because I had heard parts of stuff about points going live before Worlds, and I think that there's some good clarification because I had planned to say, is it a good idea to launch to drop new points before Worlds when then people will have to kind of go back and forth.
Yeah, I mean, let me clarify because it's actually not 100%. That's not. So we are releasing a XWA section points beta in September. It is before Worlds with the 20-point system. But it will be completely separated from the current AMG standard and extended options when it comes to squad building. We just want to test these pieces,
sure,
and basically have a runway for testing. So because a lot of people can't make it to the GTs, and for me in the Midwest, Gen Con is the only GT. So a lot of people just have nothing to play at if they're not near a GT. So we just want to, take advantage of the testing time, get people something fresh to play, and also respect the fact that there is still an OP season going on. So there will be a points beta before Worlds 2025 Adepticon.
And that's an
After
important
that
distinction.
is when we might have bigger changes.
Sure.
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry. Yeah, that's an important distinction though, because calling it a beta and not just saying, "Oh, these are the new points," helps prevent confusion. It helps establish what
Hopefully.
exactly you're doing. Yeah.
People are still confused.
It sounds that way to me, but I mean, it's good that you're out here kind of setting the record straight, and so that's good, because I'll admit I had heard whispers and probably broken, garbled information, so it's good to get to that.
Yeah.
Now I know that there's definitely questions. You kind of talked about this already, but I'll go back and we can double down on it. As far as like bigger changes too, like I know there's a lot of people that have their fair share of things about 2.5 that maybe they didn't like, oh, well, generics aren't are completely point costed out, like you can't run generics anymore, or I don't like the loadout options, or standard loadouts are unbound. I mean, some of that goes to points, but maybe somebody that doesn't like road, or are there any of those rules that you guys are looking at, well, that you're prepared to talk about right now, or is it more of well, we're always looking at everything, or
yeah, I mean, I'm gonna talk about. It might sound like I'm talking about both sides of my mouth, but first of all, like we are. I'll get the political answer out of the way first. Is that we are, everything literally is on the table when it comes to taking seriously the points of removing or adding or tweaking current parts of the rule set. Range 0 is an example of something that is very unpopular amongst most people who generally like 2.5. The way that range 0 interactions on average happen for them and happen for specific ships and pilots chassis, it could probably use some looking at, right?
Sure.
Now, am I going to be able to promise exactly what that looks like? No. But we are aware that 2.5, there's a lot of design spaces that I think are interesting that were never really paved enough. It was kind of half baked and started, and then by the time we probably could have gotten some things spruced up, MG was like, and walked away. And so we want to make sure that we will, at first, we're serious about considering what currently exists, what we could keep, or what we could optimize or make better. And then the things that are just generally just not going to work or have just test very poorly, we will be very serious about removing.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Hopefully, I'll throw one more on there for the pile, and that's like deficit scoring. I never really liked that, because so many times you add up to like 19 points, and this is my perfect build, but I give my opponent a point right away because I found a build that I like. I definitely think there's stuff that AMG could have done better with the 2.5 rule set, but it's nice to just hearing that everything's on the table and doesn't have to necessarily be thrown out, but maybe could be tweaked.
Yeah. I can tell you this. Paul, when Paul joined us, he was pretty adamant, and this is not any slight when I say this, about scenarios having a place in the game in terms of the balance that's to be determined, how scenarios in the future of the XWA's efforts are balanced along dogfighting. But I could definitely tell you guys that we're not going to be removing scenarios and going to straight up dogfighting. Again, legacy exists for that. We when we respect that, but we think scenarios strategically have a place in the game, and we'll be exploring that.
Yeah, of course, you could always tweak the balance on those scenarios if maybe one leans too heavy into objectives. That's one thing I noticed is, I think when AMG was selling us on the scenarios, at that very first gameplay live stream that they did, I think they did a very poor job of trying to sell us.
They didn't play the objective.
Well, nobody blew up any ships. The first time I saw them play that, I think one ship blew up, but it's because he crashed into a rock or something like that. So they weren't even, it was kind of sold under we're trying to take X-Wing back to its roots, which sounded strange to me because it was a dogfighting game at its roots, and then they played a game where nobody hardly shot each other. So I was,
was that the one where they used the Armada obstacles? Wasn't that one of the
I think it was. I think that was
illegal ops.
Yeah. So it always just kind of felt to me very stale. Their heart was never in it from the beginning. And that's just me being a little sour, I think, on the way that everything has kind of evolved, but it definitely feels that way, especially when you're kind of, when one of your lead folks calls X-Wing a tower defense game in this live stream. So I was not a fan of the way that whole thing happened. And then of course the community was irate, and it was just a big back and forth. And very toxic situation. But it
Yeah,
sounds like
you're bringing up all these nostalgic moments for us. It's so nice to just reminisce
yeah,
about the lovely times that we all enjoyed together.
before the
I will
dark
say with
times.
scenarios before the dark times. Yeah, exactly. Good Obi-Wan impression.
Thank you, thank you.
Um, yeah, people gamified this scenario. Like they tech. There's so it's so easy. I run a league right now, a pretty big one, and we're
Mhm.
using the current rule set. And it's very easy to tech against scenarios, medium, large bases for assault, where you just kind of sit in your points and you farm them. Even if you
Mhm.
don't destroy anything, you outpace your opponent with point scoring that way. Salvage mission or scramble, for example, is all high initiatives. Like if you bring anything lower than an initiative 5, you probably lose if your opponent's playing the objective. And
Mhm.
those are key balance issues that we're definitely looking at, because there's so many pilots in the game of X-Wing with cool abilities that we want people to play,
Yeah.
that because of scenarios aren't ever even that people forget their names, they forget they exist, and
Yeah.
that's a
Okay.
problem.
That's
That's not
fair.
good.
Yeah, I'm gonna bring up Armada just a little bit because I think one of the things that Star Wars Armada always had objectives and like objective scorings. There was always like a scenario you were playing every game. It was never a straight dogfight, but a lot of those scenarios would favor combat. Like, oh, if you shoot the rear of another ship, you gain extra points, or if your squadrons shoot another ship, you gain points. And and the ones that were like area control or what have you were weighted in a way that it didn't make you not want to attack each other. It was an option, and it was maybe like a 70-30 or an 80-20 kind of balance between them, where it was a significant scale tipper if somewhere in there. So I always like that kind of level of like maybe 75-25. You still can joust and dogfight, but if you're losing that, there's a way for you to kind of even the odds by playing the objective. That's I always liked that level of balance that they had, and I
Yeah.
feel like AMG wants it the other way around, where it's like 75% objective, and then like, oh, maybe shoot, but you don't have to shoot. So I feel like there's definitely probably some wiggle room.
Yeah, and it's ironically the dogfighting one, chance engagement, is probably the worst scenario, because it takes too long to evolve. Every
Mhm.
side scores a point every round, and so it's just, and most people tie because
Yeah.
of the way half points are scored. So you finally get to the end, like, it's 16-16 road.
Hmm.
It's like,
Sure.
that's also it's ironic to me that we crave that dogfight balance, where it's more emphasis on the dogfighting, and then the scenario that is mostly based on that just isn't tuned very well either.
I always found that, like, from setup, played 1.0 a lot and stuff. The obstacles tend to gravitate towards the middle a little bit more, and so a lot of your initial engagements take place on those outer lanes. And I don't want to have to dive towards the middle to make this fight count. I want to actually be able to fight wherever my opponent is, and if my opponent's on the outside, then that's where the fight is, and that's one of the things that you know that's one of the things I always liked about X-Wing, was that where are we going to fight, where are the lanes going to be, how are the obstacles set up, and is this going to be where we're circling around each other, or are we going to be zigzagging through each other? It was always
Yeah.
very, very interesting to me. Maybe new obstacles could also help change that up a little
That
bit.
was a conversation today where people are like, what if we use different, like, if there were new obstacles? And I was
Or
like,
even just different shapes.
why not?
Sometimes different shapes can just can really
Yeah.
change
I said
things.
I want a rock the size of my head, and I have a big forehead, so
Oh
it'd be
yeah,
the
that
biggest obstacle,
would be like
this
The Rock.
asteroid.
Yeah.
The rock.
Dwayne The
Yeah,
Rock
it'd be
Johnson is
Kessel.
the final
You
boss.
call it Dwayne, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
can we license your forehead? No. Let me ask you something a little different. What about huge ships? Is that on you guys' radar? Is that a priority right now? Is it something that you guys are looking at? And what kind of feedback are you getting from communities? Is that something that you think the X-Wing community is interested in right now? Because I know that there was like some points that were on one of the list builders that was kind of like an unofficial thing, and I don't.
That's a good question.
Maybe that's a good enough solution for right now.
Well, I will say, do I think X-Wing players, is this something X-Wing players are interested in? There have been a group of X-Wing players interested in begging and hoping and praying that they would get updates and something to look forward to when it comes to huge ships and epic play as well, and they haven't gotten anything, and really, I actually, since I never partook in playing in with huge ships, even though I own a couple, and I never really played Epic either. I just kind of forgot about that. And there's a community of players that they'll play normal X-wing, but they want to play with huge ships and more points and more ships. And yes, that is actually a priority right now. Paul is doing a pretty deep dive into talking with the community, getting feedback from players who use the huge ships, who play epic formats. And we'll have an announcement actually in September. We have these cool like announcements with these nice letterheads, their logo that you might have seen circulating. Paul and I are working together on getting an announcement on Epic in a few weeks. So yes, absolutely. It's definitely something that we actually have a lot more flexibility to work with now, because as far for all intensive purposes, whereas standard play and AMG OP tournaments are still happening, Epic play has been gone, and we have a lot more free reign to be able to dive into Epic play, huge ship play right away.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Let me ask you guys if about so one of the things that I feel like is going to be an issue in the future is with lack of reprints and product availability. There's going to come a point where you're going to have a Worlds tournament and people are like, hey, I couldn't get any ships, so I had to 3D print stuff, or I had to use aftermarket. I had to use an Etsy shop for my cards and stuff like that. Where do you guys stand right now on the idea? And I'll say this for post 2025, because I understand, while AMG is still running, calling the shots, you still can't, it's the same thing with Armada too. You can't just be like, okay, well, we're going to allow copyright infringement, or whatever. But like for post 2025, people are looking for a gunboat. They're not making gunboats or whatever. What do you say to somebody who's like, hey, can I use my 3D printed gunboat?
Yeah. So now I have a lot to say on this, or a decent amount. I'm going to start with saying that ultimately we're going to leave it up to TOs if they have more specific preferences, but alt arts, reasonable proxies, just components that TOs can verify, even like custom damage decks. We'll have a way to be able to verify these things. Be like, yep, that is a model that looks exactly like a Star Wing. That's absolutely something we have to consider, that because there will be no product, like you said, and you can't just borrow a Star Wing from your buddy. Maybe you're the only person that plays X-Wing in like a 15-mile radius, right? And you don't want to spend $400 to buy a 1.0 expansion to be able to get a model to play in a tournament. We totally understand. There's going to be a lot of things that we're going to put in place that will support players being able to play and access the game and what they want to play without having to spend much, if at all, any money. I don't exactly know what that looks like, but if money's at all involved, it's never for profit, and it's certainly going to be something that isn't going to make anybody bat an eye.
Right.
So yeah, alt arts for me, I mean, huge, because I played in Worlds. I had a Worlds invite, and I had all these beautiful Paul LaRue, shout out to Paul, alt arts for my Imperial squad. And the announcement round 2, the announcement's like, if we see you using alt arts, you will be disqualified. It's like XWA will not be doing that, so we will not care if you bring an alt art. It's always good to bring the official card, because official text, just in case. But
and I think one of the big things is, like you said, you touched on this. You said, up to the TO and in a reasonable approximation. So, I think a lot of people are always like, oh, I want this ship, I want that ship, or whatever. Well, you can always just proxy something, find a ship that it would work best as, and proxy that for your kitchen table games and stuff. But yeah, I have run into folks, and has happened to me on a couple of occasions, where somebody was proxying for X-Wing, and because we're using micro machines or something like that, and the proxies sort of got ridiculous. Like, they were like TIE fighters in place of X-Wings, and so like now it's a whole different faction's ship. Like, it's not, at this point you've become confusing, and you've ruined immersion. And I think the confusing part is probably the worst part. But honestly, like, I mean, this is a 3D miniatures game. It's not just a cardboard game,
right?
And there are games that do that, but this is a 3D miniatures game, and immersion is part of it. you know. And so like
Yeah.
it's a bummer if somebody's playing it like, oh, I'm gonna put Voltron on this ship. I'm like, why don't you ask my permission first if I felt like playing a Voltron game? You know. So
Yeah. No, it's a good point. I mean, again, we will. I know that in the past, the rules documents have said like it has to be distinguishable. If you modify it or whatever, as long as you can tell this is what it is. And I'd say the XWA standstill is like if you're flying an X-wing, it's got to look something like an X-wing. You got to be like, oh, you walk up to, you're like, oh, that looks like an X-wing. It looks like an X-wing.
Sure.
Tie that example right where people are putting in other faction ships is not going to be something that we'll support and be like, yeah, you should totally fine.
Good.
But I will also say in terms of cardboard, that's a big thing. Like collection bloat is an issue with X-Wing players. We have like a ton of, containers filled with just like cardboard, and we have to sift through them to find our pilots when we're putting together lists. It's a conversation we've been having is about more like generic initiative labeled nameplates that you can basically swap in and out, and you can change, like if you can write in the initiative so that you can bring Kylo Ren or switch it to recoil, and you can change it without having to dig through your collection to find the cardboard.
That would be a really nice thing. Yeah, if you had just like a dry erase marker where you could write it on there and it was like an acrylic token, I would love that. You brought up something that I didn't even have on my list, but that is my one problem with when they went from 1.0 to 2.0 is that with all the improvements they made, the easiest one to make is one they didn't make, and that would have been X-Wings just need a single piece of cardboard. Since you needed to put a token on every ship anyway, so he's going to be target lock number 12, so you're always going to have a way to correspond a ship to a card. I hated having to be like, oh no, he has to have the cardboard that says Wedge Antilles, so now I have to dig through this massive pile of tokens and ship tokens to find that one piece of cardboard. And they could have done that a lot better. And I think if you had a modifiable base like that would be perfect.
Yeah, I will say I do love the like custom like cardboard like with the faces of the pilots on there. That's just me though. Like, you know what I mean? Like
I've seen some of those. They're very fancy.
They're very cool.
Yeah.
But I hear you absolutely, and we hear you.
And it's a great way to personalize your ships too, if you can get that. And I know that's one of the things that Armada and X-Wing are both going to have to deal with is how do you replace these cardboard components, because a lot of people have 3D printers, but not that many people are making really nice thick cardboard that's going to feel the same. And so it'd be nice to as solutions kind of present themselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's talk a little bit more about past worlds, because I think you've answered most of my questions. What are you guys did talk about like the long-term goals about having the biggest tournament ever, and I want to revisit that a little bit. Can you talk about what like Worlds 2026 is going to look like? Are there plans to also have this at Adepticon, or is there going to be other organized play support past 2025?
So those are great questions. So 2026 Adepticon, let's start with Adepticon. They've already expressed, if you read their statement on what happened with X-Wing and AMG's decision, you saw that they're going to already support X-Wing in 2026 and beyond. They have a great relationship with several members of the X-Wing Alliance, including Dion Morales from Gold Squadron podcast. And Dion is they've had a long-standing relationship, and so we will be able to work with Adepticon pretty seamlessly to be able to represent the game of X-Wing at Adepticon. When it comes to other big, like Nova, Gen Con, for example, not sure. We're certainly going to put in every effort to represent X-Wing at every event we can. There will be OP Store Champ kits, including one that's actually going to be teased and announced for this year, because store champs don't exist anymore. You can, if you want to put an unofficial one together, you can, but there is no reason to, for a TO there's no Worlds Invite or store champ kit, right? That just didn't happen. So we have a Wave Zero kit as well.
It's funny because it sounded like for a little bit AMG was saying that store champ kits were absolutely happening this year, and then
I don't know what happened with any of that. I was so confused.
Yeah, I have more to
say.
They
did say that, I think.
Yeah, no, yeah, but I'm gonna withhold some of my remarks that for right now, because it's a very, very bizarre situation the way that whole thing went
so
down.
strange.
Yeah.
We have a whole organized play team. We're looking at all sorts of prizes, including dice
Mhm.
that the XWA can stand behind, find the right manufacturer. I know that custom dice is always, a topic of debate at,
Mhm.
at best, like, what would we allow? And we'll definitely do our due diligence to make sure that if or when we do custom dice in the future, that they'll be the right kind of good quality dice
Let me
as
ask you a
well.
question about dice. I don't know if it still exists, but I still have it on my phone. Have you ever heard of the
Oh no.
FFG dice build, the
Oh
dice app?
no. Unfortunately, I've had the worst anecdotal experiences dealing with that
No
thing. Yes,
kidding.
I certainly.
I have it, and I
Oh my
absolutely
gosh.
love it. For me, it's a great time killer. If I'm bored, I'm just like, let me imagine this attack, and whoosh, oh, all blanks, But like that was under FFG, that was a supported and a legal and authorized way to play, was using the dice app. And I don't know, I mean, I'm curious if you guys are considering like allowing people who want to use the dice app the ability to use the dice app.
That's such a good question. I don't have an answer to that. My personal preference, I don't like the dice app. But the good thing about the X-Wing Alliance is the X-Wing Alliance does not care if Nick likes the dice app or not. That doesn't matter at all.
Sure.
And I have no influence on that at all. I would think again the long-term goal, besides having the largest event in 2030, is to just represent X-Wing players and to point them in the right direction so they can just play X-Wing.
Mhm.
We're not gonna, it's not gonna be the, oh, you got to play our version of the game or you got to get out of here. Like, no,
Mhm.
like you want to play 200-point list building 2.0 legacy, we will give you the resources to go and do that. If you want to play 2.5 or what we, the modification of what we come up with in the future, you can do that. And we want access to be another major point for us. It
Mhm.
is going to be a major point for us. Is like, so if rolling dice is, is inconvenience or for
Mhm.
any reason, or you just prefer to have a massive charging bank plugged into your phone and go a whole day with the tournament, shaking your phone and rolling dice, we can consider that. I,
Sure.
I will have to get back to you on that one though.
I think a big thing is going to be on the availability, because I imagine at some point it won't be in the stores anymore. And once it's not available to anyone anymore, then I think you may have to say, okay, well, it wouldn't be fair for you to do something that other people can't, no longer have access to do.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's totally reasonable.
Mhm.
I would definitely say that we will make it a point, a priority, that if at any point we have dice available, that it's not just going to be gate kept by like the top two at an event, and
Mhm.
we'll start with that. And then of course, we're not going to, anything that would prevent a player from being able to play the game of X-Wing, we
Yeah.
were going to try to prevent.
Excellent. Excellent. Well,
Yeah.
Nick, thank you so much. I think I think that's all the questions that I have. Is there anything important you can think of that maybe I missed that you need to get out? Any like, oh, you forgot to ask about the giant choo-choo train, Space Voltron coming to X-wing?
Uh,
Or
yeah. The Thomas the Tank Engine,
I just
huge ship that's
randomly
coming
made that
out.
up off the top of my head.
Yeah,
I
that
should
was
probably
good. I
edit
couldn't
that
tell.
out, but it's gonna stay in. All right.
It's gonna stay in.
Yeah.
Let me see. There's a couple of just clarifying things.
Sure.
One is I just ask folks to be patient and understand that a points beta is a beta, and that means that it's subject to change and needs testing. So of course, I understand if there's something that you see from the X-Wing Alliance that you want to challenge, we encourage the discourse, but we also encourage good faith conversation and discussion. That doesn't mean you need to be positive. It just means that you need to engage in a way that can be seen as constructive. So some people on the internet, as the internet is, have decided already they're going to hate something, and then they come into the conversation already deciding and making up their mind.
Mhm.
And we just, hope that we can kind of come together um, in this kind of unprecedented time, right? We haven't had X-Wing has always been supported by Fantasy Flight Games and AMG, and now here we are, and it's not supported after 2025. And it's kind of I think it's a testy time for a lot of people. People are contemplating leaving the game, switching to a different format of the game, are just, they're not sure. And so just be patient with us, and we want to work with you, and we want to put together a game that that doesn't cater to every single person's every single demand and wish list, but really just a game that we can all be proud of and
Mhm.
be excited to play. And that's the goal here. So that's one thing. The 2.5 edition server, you can talk to all of us, the council, the leadership council members, me, other members of the X-Wing Alliance. We're all about transparency and sharing what we're working on with you guys as often as we can. So
Awesome.
Those are the two main points.
All right. So it did say you talked about some of the people kind of making up their mind they're going to be angry, and I was like, Star Wars fans deciding they're not going to like something Star Wars.
Believe it.
I've never seen.
When I have to post our announcements on Reddit,
Oh.
it's laughable. Like the first thing somebody said was like, "I'm getting really sick of XWing Alliance announcements," and it's like, somebody's like, we don't get any communication from AMG, and then we post like maybe once a week right now just because we have all these updates.
How dare you
like,
give us stuff that we've been begging for years?
This is too much.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is people are like, I want a points update. When's the points update? I need a points change. I need a points change. And we say, we're planning on having a points rotation 2 to 3 times a year. We'll change the points around. And they're like, whoa. Like, what are you doing there? Like changing points. And it's like, well, X-Wing needs points changes. So we're going to have to accept that's the best way to keep the game moving, is that things get rotated and points change.
Sometimes the loudest crud rises to the top, and you don't see the comment of like the 99% of the people who are just like, oh, okay, cool, and then move on. You only see that one person who's just like, I'm gonna ruin his day.
right. Yeah, the internet is.
Oh no, I just hope my dog's crazy.
Oh, you got your dogs excited.
They're going crazy. I know. All right, stop it. All right. All right. Well, with that,
it's been positive though. Yeah. It's been positive.
All right. Well, we're gonna get some links. We'll put them down in the video description below. Nick, thank you so much for joining and for spreading the good word of XWing Alliance. And you guys also don't forget to check out 312 Squadron as well, which we will link in the video description below. Thanks so much, Nick. Hope you have a fantastic rest of your day, and may the Force be with you.
May the Force be with you.
And to everybody else, my patrons, you guys are awesome. Thanks so much for helping keep the channel running. I will talk to you all later. May the Force be with all of you. Live long and prosper. Be excellent to each other. The spice must flow. And always wash your socks.